The United States will completely destroy Russia if war breaks out between the two countries, according to David Petraeus, former CIA director and four-star general of the U.S. Army. He specifically emphasized that in the event Russia uses nuclear weapons in Ukraine, the United States would lead NATO in a coordinated attack to eliminate all Russian forces stationed in or around Ukraine. However, General David Petraeus did not specify who would emerge victorious if the two most powerful military superpowers were to engage in a direct confrontation. While it's clear that a war between Russia and the U.S. would inevitably escalate into a global conflict involving most of their respective allies, the question remains, does the U.S. have the strength to defeat Russia alone? What strategies are being deployed to clip the wings of the American giant? All of this will be revealed in today's episode of Military Knowledge. Before diving into the content of this first episode, which airs in 2024, the Military Knowledge team would like to extend heartfelt wishes for a happy and prosperous new year to our audience. We wish you good health and abundant success. We also hope to continue receiving your attention and support in the years to come. Now, without further delay, let's begin with one of the key factors in this century's competition, the size of the armies of the Russian and American giants. According to the latest statistics from the Global Firepower Index, the U.S. and Russia rank as the number 1 and 2 military powers in the world, respectively. The United States has a total of 1.39 million military personnel, of which 1.32 million are active duty soldiers. A significant portion, over 1 million, serve in the U.S. Army. In addition to its ground forces, the U.S. Air Force and Navy boast between 600,000 to 700,000 personnel. The U.S. also commands a formidable array of modern military equipment, including 13,300 aircraft, 9,975 of which are combat-ready, alongside 5,500 tanks, and over 300,000 ground vehicles. The U.S. Navy operates 11 aircraft carriers, 92 destroyers, and Ohio-class submarines capable of launching ballistic missiles. This makes the U.S. military a fearsome force across all battlefields, land, air, and sea. Meanwhile, Russia's military consists of over 1.3 million personnel, with 830,000 on active duty and 250,000 in reserve. Russia also commands paramilitary groups, such as Wagner, which are essentially controlled by Moscow. Though its total manpower is not far behind that of the U.S., Russia's Air Force lags significantly, with only 4,182 aircraft, half of which are combat-ready, and around 250,000 active personnel in its aerospace forces. On the ground, Russia has about half as many combat vehicles as the U.S., but compensates with an impressive 12,556 tanks and 6,575 self-propelled guns, the largest arsenal in the world. The Russian Navy operates a large fleet of 598 warships, but has only one aircraft carrier, the Admiral Kuznetsov, and 15 destroyers. Although the number of submarines between Russia and the U.S. is similar, Russia holds a numerical advantage in several other categories. Based on these figures, it's clear that if the outcome of a war were determined solely by the size of military forces, the U.S. would likely have the upper hand due to its overwhelming advantage in both personnel and equipment. However, history shows that numbers alone don't guarantee victory. The U.S. faced significant setbacks in Vietnam, and Russia is currently struggling in Ukraine. Therefore, while military size is important, it certainly isn't the deciding factor in who will ultimately claim victory. To find that answer, we must delve into other variables, including strategy, tactics, and technology, as both Russia and the U.S. have unique strengths and systems in place. Russia's infantry forces are quite similar to those of the United States, as both militaries rely on light infantry squads divided into helicopter and airborne units. Each squad typically consists of 9 soldiers, including a squad leader and 2 fire teams. Each fire team has a leader armed with an automatic M4 carbine, 1 soldier operating an M249 machine gun, 2 soldiers equipped with assault rifles fitted with grenade launchers, and 1 soldier armed with grenades. Additionally, depending on mission requirements, each squad may also be equipped with A4 anti-tank weapons. In the U.S. mechanized infantry units, you'll find various types of armored fighting vehicles, such as the Stryker and Bradley. The most notable among them is a new generation of the Striker, armed with a powerful 30-millimeter cannon, as well as the Javelin anti-tank missile system, which has gained fame on the Ukrainian battlefield for its ability to neutralize a significant number of Russian tanks. This gives the U.S. military a valuable mid-range option for taking out enemy armor, especially critical when considering that Russia's ground forces heavily rely on tanks and armored vehicles. On the Russian side, instead of mechanized squads, they possess motorized rifle units typically outfitted with BMP or BTR armored vehicles. Each of these vehicles carries a 7-man combat squad armed with 2 PKM machine guns, AK-74M rifles, and a shorter-range RPG-7 anti-tank weapon. Some elite units are equipped with modern Cornet rockets, which boast a range of 5.5 kilometers, far surpassing the Javelin's 2.5 kilometers. However, most of Russia's motorized rifle units lack any anti-tank weapon that can match the Javelin's effectiveness. This gives the Americans a slight advantage, or at least puts them on an even playing field when it comes to infantry firepower. One notable difference is the disparity in the number of infantry units each nation can deploy. Russian infantry has 3 platoons per armored transport vehicle, while their airborne units tend to be more basic. According to National Interest magazine, this gives Russia's ground forces a theoretically higher level of tactical mobility, as their motorized rifle units can deploy more troops on the battlefield faster than the US's. It's predominantly land-based light infantry. However, moving large numbers of troops quickly isn't without its drawbacks. If a transport vehicle is incapacitated for any reason, 1/3 of a small Russian force's combat effectiveness is instantly lost, whereas in the U.S. Army, only about 1/4 of the force would be affected due to the balance between mechanized and infantry units. The U.S. also holds a potential advantage in this regard because of its superior number of armored vehicles and the effectiveness of the Javelin missile. This limits the mobility of Russian infantry units, whose reliance on motorized vehicles makes them more vulnerable in certain situations. Of course, in modern warfare, infantry won't be fighting alone. Both Russian and American forces will have support from mortars, artillery, and tanks, which means the outcomes of specialized battles will be determined by more than just firepower. Tactics and terrain will play a crucial role. For instance, in areas with complex and uneven terrain, the combat effectiveness of Russian forces would likely decrease significantly due to their dependence on vehicles and mobile firepower. Russia has an advantage in cold climates, but while each side may hold certain advantages when fighting on their home turf, the large and well-equipped U.S. military would make any opponent vulnerable, no matter where the battlefield may be. The same dynamic plays out in the skies. While Russia possesses a sizable air force, the U.S. Air Force excels in carrying out comprehensive aerial campaigns. These operations often involve mobilizing 20 to 100 aircraft for a single mission, covering vast geographical areas. Some aircraft perform reconnaissance and support roles, while others engage in direct air attacks. This multifaceted approach enables the United States to control large swaths of territory, outmaneuvering enemy air forces and opening up opportunities for international cooperation. For instance, the U.S. frequently involves allied nations in these coordinated operations, a tactic many experts believe would be used if the U.S. were to face Russia alone, especially given the U.S. advantage in both air assets and the quality of its personnel. The one area where both countries are somewhat evenly matched is in their nuclear-powered submarines. Russia could use this parity to regain some advantage. According to Newsweek, President Putin has focused on upgrading Russia's surface combat capabilities after years of neglect following the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. 2 standout vessels in the Russian fleet, the Imperator Alexander III and Krasnoyarsk submarines, represent this modernization. The Alexander III, in particular, can carry up to 16 Bulava ballistic missiles, giving Russia the capacity to deliver powerful strikes on U.S. territory. President Putin remains optimistic, stating that more nuclear submarines would enter service by December 2023 to ensure Russia's national security for decades to come. On the other side, the United States also excels in this domain. All 4 of its primary submarine classes, Virginia, Ohio, Los Angeles, and Seawolf, are powered by nuclear energy. The Ohio-class submarines, in particular, are equipped with ballistic missiles, with 14 out of the 18 Ohio-class subs capable of launching nuclear strikes. This gives the U.S. significant first-strike capabilities if the conflict between Russia and the U.S. escalates into a full-blown war of attrition. This capacity also underscores the importance of maintaining reserve forces and a robust military production capability, especially in the event of a prolonged conflict. The United States currently holds the lead in arms production, especially in terms of supplying foreign countries. From 2018 to 2022, the U.S. accounted for 40% of total global arms exports, all while maintaining its own national stockpiles. Russia, in contrast, was second, accounting for 16% of global arms exports. However, the decline in Russia's arms exports can be explained by its ongoing war with Ukraine, which has necessitated a focus on equipping its own forces rather than selling weapons abroad. It's important to note that the U.S. had already surpassed Russia in arms sales even before the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Between 2013 and 2017, the U.S. accounted for 33% of global arms exports, while Russia trailed with 22%. Although the gap was smaller in that period, the difference was still notable. It's a mistake, however, to assume that Russia's capacity for arms production is weak. In fact, Russia is fully capable of ramping up production when necessary. For example, in September 2023, Reuters reported that President Putin ordered a significant increase in weapons production to equip Russian soldiers fighting in Ukraine, despite the heavy sanctions Moscow has faced from the West. According to Mr. Khan Ozdev, the industrial director of Roche Group, responsible for producing the majority of weapons for Russia, production has reportedly increased from 2 to 10 times its previous levels. However, he pointed out that ramping up production of rockets, tanks, artillery, and ballistic missiles has become increasingly difficult due to sanctions imposed directly on Roche. The U.S. Treasury Department has identified this group as a critical technology and industrial foundation for Russia's defense production. If Roche optimizes its production capabilities, it will be challenging for the Russians to run out of weapons, unlike U.S. state-owned corporations, which lack the luxury of easily replacing their supplies. American weapons are typically produced through contracts between the government and private enterprises, such as Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, General Dynamics, or Boeing. If Russia does indeed maximize its weapons production, could the United States face delays in negotiations and bureaucratic processes that might slow down the provision of equipment to its military? While these concerns are valid, they pale in comparison to the reality that if either country were to decide to deploy their most devastating assets, nuclear weapons, there would be catastrophic consequences. Estimates from the Russian Arms Control Association indicate that Russia currently possesses about 5,889 nuclear warheads, with 1,549 deployed for combat. This exceeds the United States, which has around 5,244 total warheads and 1,010 ready for combat. However, numerical superiority means little, as both countries have more than enough nuclear arsenal to obliterate one another multiple times over. The specter of mutual destruction looms large, especially if either nation were reckless enough to initiate a nuclear strike. From a quality perspective, Russia wields a formidable weapon, the RS-28 Sarmat missile, colloquially known as Satan. Set to enter service in September 2023, this missile system can reportedly deliver nuclear warheads further than any other intercontinental ballistic missile, ICBM, with a range of up to 18,000 kilometers. According to Moscow, each Sarmat can carry up to 15 warheads of 350 kilotons each, although Washington disputes this number, estimating it to be at most 10. The range of the Sarmat is particularly concerning, as it allows Russia to launch from almost anywhere within its territory and strike American soil. In contrast, the U.S.'s most powerful ICBM, the Minuteman III, has a range of approximately 13,000 kilometers. Impressive, but outdated compared to the Sarmat. Moreover, according to a report by the U.S. Institute of Naval Research, the Minuteman III has only been tested up to a range of 10,000 kilometers, indicating that the 13,000-kilometer figure may be largely theoretical. Even the next-generation LGM-35A Sentinel missile is still in development and is expected to have a range of over 5,500 kilometers, less than the Minuteman III and only a third of the Sarmat's range. Thus, the United States must hope that the Sentinel proves more capable than currently advertised. Otherwise, its nuclear capabilities and strategic position could be severely compromised. Nonetheless, the U.S. can take some comfort in the understanding that if one country initiates a nuclear attack, the other will almost certainly retaliate in kind, resulting in mutual destruction. Consequently, the world would bear the brunt of the fallout. If nuclear weapons are removed from the equation, the United States generally holds a much greater advantage in terms of military vehicles and advanced air power. In naval warfare, the balance becomes more equitable. The U.S. boasts a large number of destroyers that excel in open waters, while Russia's smaller warships offer greater mobility in coastal regions. To address the central question of this video, could the United States defeat Russia alone? The answer is yes, but it would be exceedingly difficult, with consequences that could be catastrophic. History has demonstrated that Russia is a challenging adversary. What are your thoughts? Does Moscow still possess any trump cards yet to be played, or beneath its strong facade, does the United States have vulnerabilities that Russia could exploit? Please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you again in our next video. Wishing everyone a peaceful day with family.